On our anatomy series, we've looked at drag cars, we've looked at circuit cars, we've looked at street cars. We've never really gone in depth into a rally car, and today, that's exactly what we've got. I'm really excited about this thing. I've learned a lot of stuff as I've been going through this Escort, understanding how these guys think and what they use these cars for. It's pretty crazy. Starting with the car, this is a Mark I Ford Escort made in 1972. Originally had some aspirated 4-cylinder asthmatic engine in it, not this one. This one's been K-swapped with a K24 A3 engine that was normally found in a Honda Accord Euro.
Concept about building the car was we were doing Dakar program. We were just starting to do the Dakar program, and that build takes a long time. Takes a year you'd hardly get to drive the car just before it's ready, before the race. So I wanted to have some fun with some of the other boys in the workshop. They had old rally cars and stat. So when we got it, the floors were rusted, the plenum was rusted. Look, they rusted when they were new, unfortunately, some of the Escorts. And years weren't kind to them, and so. But you can buy all the panels pretty much. So we bought new panels. I bought new panels from England, and then the rest I made to fit the engine and the tunnel. And okay, at the moment we've just finished fitting the K24. Before that, I had an S2000. I absolutely loved that engine. It was revving to 10,000 RPMs. We decided to go to 2.4. It's a bit harder fitting because no one's got a gearbox that goes on the back of the K24. So technically it was a lot harder engine to fit. And that's why I didn't go with it the first time. And I wanted something a bit cheaper. And so that's the way we've gone now. And I'm really happy with it.
One of the things that you'll notice in the engine bay, and well, over this whole car as we go around it, is it's certainly a matter of function over form or fashion. Looking in this engine bay, you're not going to find a Tevzel mil-spec DR25 Raychem sheathed wiring harness. You're going to find the factory wiring harness out of the factory Honda Accord that this engine came from. And Bruce has got really good reason for doing that. His argument, which makes complete sense, is that if you've got this fancy Tevzel harness with all of your Raychem heat shrinking and all of your beautiful boots and all of your nice stuff, yeah, I get it, it shouldn't fail. But in the environment that these things get run at, where they get run, how many kilometres a day they get run, failure is inevitable. Stuff is going to happen. So the thought process behind this is that if the harness is all out and exposed, you can see exactly what's going on. When a failure occurs, you can pinpoint that failure, repair it quickly, and get straight back out on the track so you don't lose any time during that stage. And keeping with that mindset, Bruce tries to use as many factory parts as he can with his thinking that, well, a factory Honda is going to do 300, 400,000 kilometres on the road over 30 years. If he can get that to last 200 kilometres over a race event, then bring it back in, repair anything that's broken, update or make better anything that has broken for the next event, well, that's the right way to be doing it. Things like his VW header tank up here, his factory intake manifold, his factory fuel rails, as much factory stuff as he could retain, he has, and it makes perfect sense because it doesn't break in a factory application, and if it does, you'll be able to find these factory parts in the middle of Australia. While so much stuff about this car has been changed, I know that Bruce was pretty sentimental about his radiator, and when you have a look at this thing, it looks like the original Escort radiator that came in this car, but it's not. It's actually an aluminium core, really nice thing that he bought in from Europe. It keeps sort of the look of the front end of the car. It makes it look old school, which I really like, but it also does a really good job of keeping the engine cool at about 88 degrees Celsius while we've been on the dyno giving it a hard time. This is normally the part of the anatomy videos where we go through and talk about all of the custom parts. Simplicity is best in this case. Got a K&N air filter, probably works harder than most of the air filters we've ever touched on, simply because this thing needs to filter out so much dirt every single event. Up through a simple intake pipe into a factory S2000 intake manifold, K24 engine, like I said. The only mods to this thing, it's got a set of camshafts up the top, it's got a dry sump set up down the bottom, so that's got a dry sump tank in the boot of the car. And then it's got a really nice set of headers over that side out to the free-flowing exhaust out the back. In its natural environment, the K24 engine sits in east-west in between the strut towers. But when we turn it rear-wheel drive, put a rear-wheel drive gearbox on it, everything looks pretty good. There are two problems with the Honda engine when we do this. The first one is that with the factory sump on them, they actually have quite a big lean. So they are a little bit tricky to fit in the engine bay, especially in the Escort where the strut towers are so narrow. Because this thing's dry sumped, Bruce has been able to straighten this engine up a little bit, which is you might notice that it looks just a little bit different to what you're expecting, but don't be worried at all. The dry sump kit takes care of all of the oiling, no problems at all there. The second problem when you put one of these in a rear-wheel drive application is the cooling system. So normally, this thing is sitting in between the strut towers, the intake manifold on the front side, the exhaust manifold on the back side, meaning that the radiator pipes or the thermostat housing down the bottom here has got a really easy pass straight to the radiator, then off the other side of the radiator, straight to the top here to the cool inlet water. Now that it's sitting like this, we've actually got our radiator pipe on the back side of the engine about here, so we'll get a close-up of that. Then the water comes all the way up through, up to the radiator, down the bottom here, squiggles its way into about here to where the thermostat housing is down the bottom. Again, not a massive problem, but you do just have to keep in mind that you are going to have radiator hoses sort of squirreling through the engine bay to get to those factory spots.
From the beginning, the hardest thing was finding the time because we were, as I said before, we were doing the Dakar program with Isuzu, and then I'd work on it sporadically during the year, and then I had a crash, and then I had a heart attack, and then I had to have heart bypass, and then I was not in a good place for a long time. So I went and worked in the workshop down in the back shed, and I'd work on the car for 2 hours or 3 hours. I'd get tired, then I'd go up. And so basically the car got finished recovering. Then I got prostate cancer, and I was doing the operation, and I wanted to get the car finished. It was getting close to being finished. I had to do radiation for 7 weeks every day, and that wrecks half the day, and then you don't feel so good. So I'd come home and I'd work in the morning, then I'd go to the hospital, and then I'd come back and I'd work as long as I could till I got tired. And I finally got it going. And the first event, I didn't even drive. I went straight into the first race up in Queensland. I hadn't even driven it 5 minutes. So yeah, that was probably those bits were the hard bit. The rest, since it's been going, has been a joy. So we built the car mainly for gravel rallies, but I've also got a tarmac suspension for doing tarmac rallies and sprints, like short events. They have them all over Australia, especially up in Queensland. So it's a bit of a mixture for both, and it's mainly just to go, I don't need any more trophies, I've got bucket loads of, it's just that thrill of the revving and the noise and the tyre smoke and going sideways. So basically it's to give my heart a bit of a jump start now and again.
here in the boot, it's all business, it's all function. There's not too much fancy stuff in here. It's just getting it done. The first thing that you'll see is beautiful fuel tank. A really, really nice piece. They've put in this big arch across the back here, and there's a very simple reason for that. They normally carry 2 spare tyres. Now that's something different to a circuit car or a drag car who obviously carry no spare tyres. These guys carried 2 spare tyres, expecting that on a stage of 150 kilometres or so, they may need to use both of those tyres. Over in the corner here, they've got a canvas bag, which you would think would hold some spare tools. It doesn't. It actually holds a rattle gun with the right socket to be able to rip a wheel off, and then another socket that operates the scissor jack, so that they're that fast, they'll get out, rattle gun into the scissor jack, the thing lifts up, rattle gun, wheel off, leave the wheel probably on the side of the road for the crew to pick up afterwards. New wheel on, job done, they're out of here. So spare tyres in a race car, something we're probably not really used to. Over the side, we are used to this part, the dry sump tank. So this is where the engine oil is stored, where we check our oil level. On the bracket here is also something that we're not really used to seeing. There's some dodgy wire and some sort of steel cables zip tied to the side here. And when I asked Bruce about it, he said, well, it's pretty simple. If we jump the thing, if something happens, we need to be able to fix it. So this tie wire is there. Then he says, well, if the exhaust is falling off halfway through an event, grab the wire it up, get it done. Whatever it takes to get to the end of the stage. So through his years and years of rallying, he's figured out that he needs some tie wire, he needs some dodgy pieces of wire, and he says, well, what happens if something goes wrong? What happens if a rock comes up through the floor, breaks the harness, everything's good except I've got no fuel pump wire? And he recalled a time once where he figured out that he could grab power from some random wire in the boot, hotwired the fuel pump, got going, and got to the end of the stage. So to finish first, you must first finish. Again, for simplicity, something that's tried and proven, the mighty Bosch 044 is over here. It's not in a fancy billet bracket or anything like that. It's got 2 big fat zip ties holding it down. If a pump fails, whip those zip ties off, slap a new one on, off you go. Another thing that I thought was really cool, because I come from a boating background and boating is all about the sight glass. Over here on the side of the fuel tank, a simple sight glass. So from here, I can see that there's 20 litres of fuel in this tank. If we've got a sender in there bouncing up and down in a rally car, often that sender will get jammed, it'll get stuck, something will happen. So these rally guys, they don't trust the sender. They want to see a sight glass. Lastly on the tank, on this corner, there's actually a built-in baffled surge tank. So instead of having your external tank with extra fittings external to the main unit, inside here, it's all baffled. The feed comes out of one side of the tank, and then we've got the return from the fuel rail that comes into the other side, so that it's all one complete unit. Least amount of fittings, least amount of problems.
Okay, the paintwork's very interesting. I didn't want a boring. I was going to paint it a Ford blue, and that's pretty boring because there's so many other cars like that. So I talked to my nephew, and he's a world famous graffiti artist, and he came down in between some of his jobs, and we had it in the workshop all in undercoat, no windows in it, and I told him the colours I wanted, and roughly I wanted some chicks on there, and because the main thing is I don't like front wheel drives, and the main thing was that I think girls like front wheel drives, but and so that was the whole theme behind the picture, was only girls drive front wheel drives. So it was actually a bit of a sledging of that, and we had to have, so it's got girls all over it, or parts of girls all over the car. And on the back windscreen, it says, only girls like front wheel drive. So it was a bit of that. But then he came, and then he spent 2 12-hour days and painted it. And then we clear coated over the top. So it's got some good stories about it. Ultimately, I wanted to go over to Europe and get the car dialed in properly here, go to Europe and do the Legends Rally in Italy, Eiffel Rally in Germany, the Goodwood Speed, and a rally in Ireland. So I'll be away for a few months, but now with the COVID, it's all not going to happen. I don't know if it'll happen, but I want my last check to bounce, basically. So if I can get enough money, I've got a budget in my head, then I can get that and we can go across, and we're allowed to travel, we're going to do it. So the class that we're doing in rallying is called Classic Class, and there's a few classes inside that, so we're Modified Classic. I picked this class because I like it's rear-wheel drive, it's old, got to be old cars. I like the shape of the old cars. We can put late model engines and rev the hell out of them, and we can go sideways in the forest. And when you're pulling 9, 10,000 RPM in the forest, if that doesn't give you a hard on, nothing's going to give you a hard on. And it's a lot. It's just heaps of fun.
Inside the car, first and foremost, safety is absolutely critical, because in one of these cars, in a rally car that's on the dirt, half on the gravel, half on the tarmac, you'd have to be pretty good to not put one of these into a guardrail or off the road at least once, probably at least once per rally, really. So this thing's got a really nice roll cage. It's got a set of Sparco seats and a set of Sparco 5-point harnesses. It's about as safe as you can really be. On the electronics front, this car is managed by a Haltech Elite 1500 series ECU. That's got full control over the engine, doing the Honda VTEC, as well as doing the fully variable cam control. It's controlling the 4 individual coils. It's doing the injection system, controlling the fuel pump, communicating with the IC7 dash via CAN. Then all the information that's getting fed into the Haltech ECU, so things like the oil pressure, the oil temp, fuel pressure, fuel temp, the GPS speed, the wideband air-fuel ratio that's being measured using the Haltech WB1 wideband oxygen sensor kit, engine RPM, battery voltage, all the diagnostic trouble codes, simple stuff, air temp, coolant temp, all those things get sent via CAN through power, ground, CAN high and CAN low, through 4 wires straight into the dash. Then Bruce can monitor everything just from the dash. We don't need to have a laptop, nothing like that to see what's going on. We can come across to a diagnostics page here on the screen and see everything that's happening, so that if we are stuck on the side of the road, we can look at all of our sensors, see what the problem is, fix it quick and keep going. The gear stick here is mated to a Hollinger 6-speed sequential gearbox. It's mated to the K24 series engine with a custom adapter plate through the bell housing, and it's got a twin plate sprung center clutch. Now, when we talk about sequentials, we always think about electronic throttle blipping, downshift rev matching, full throttle flat shifting with our load cell gear knobs. But in this style of car, Bruce has gone for the sequential gearbox to get the right ratios. He loves that sequential up and down, but uses the clutch to shift it all the way up through the gears and all the way down through the gears. It's something that sort of in the drag racing and the circuit racing community, we more talk about air shifted or paddle shifted or full throttle shifting, but not the case in this car. We're looking for reliability, and the way that he wants to do that is using the clutch with his sequential gearbox. And of course, it wouldn't be a real rally car without a hydraulic handbrake. So Bruce has got one here. It's got a fancy lever on the top. Actually also doubles as the parking brake or the e-brake, which is a pretty clever thing. So if we flip that little latch over, clip it up, that'll hold pressure, and now that is the handbrake as well. So a pretty cool little thing there. Over here on the passenger side, you'll see this little screen, and this is actually a pretty advanced trip meter and the way that the rally guys do their navigation. When the rally stage starts, we've got a navigator that sits here, and they've got a bunch of notes, and they're going to tell us, okay, in 1.2 kilometers, we need to turn left. So the navigator will be watching this trip meter here. As it hits 1.2 kilometers, we've got a full odometer that keeps on counting, and then we've got a resettable trip meter on the other side, and they've normally got a button on their feet that they'll press. So as we come up through, let's say 1.2 kilometers, the navigator will press that reset button. Our number here will reset to 0, and then they'll read off their notes, okay, next turn is 500 meters away and we need to turn right. So as they're going through, the navigator's job is to tell the driver exactly where to go. So these are navigation notes, they're not pace notes. So in this style of rally, you can't go through the whole course, and you actually don't drive the whole course to suss it out before you do the event. Normally, when this driver sees the corner, that's the first time they're ever going to approach that corner. So it's not it's not like a Group N rally where the navigator's telling them the intensity of the turn. So they might be saying, a 6 right, a 5 left, a 9 left, handbrake turn, U-turn, or whatever the case. they'll be telling the driver where to go on the course, because remembering, in one day of driving, these guys might do 300 kilometers. They might do 150 kilometers of racing. Each stage might be 10, 15, 20 kilometers at a time. Then they'll have to drive through neighborhoods, through areas, obeying the speed limits, obeying all of the rules in order to get to the next stage. They'll get to the next stage, their race timing will start, they'll start their trip meter again, and then they'll go for another 20 kilometers or so of real racing. There is a second safety computer in here as well, and that gives information back to race control to tell them where this car is, to make sure that it's still on its wheels and not upside down in a ditch somewhere. It'll alert them if this car all of a sudden has just stopped, meaning that the first thing they can do is tell the competitors behind us that there's a car in front of them that stopped for whatever reason. Might be super dusty and you simply can't see. And when you're going along the dirt at 100 kilometers an hour plus, you really do need somebody to be telling you what's in front of you. It's pretty terrifying. Likewise, if this car's just come to a dead stop, something bad might have happened, so you certainly want race control to get the crews to you right away to make sure that you're as safe as possible. Up the top here, something that's pretty cool that kind of did get adapted into early 2000 car culture, not for rally cars, for street car stuff in Sydney anyway, where we've got these little latches up the top here, little air vents. So as we put them up, air can come in through the roof. The best place to get some fresh air when there's all of the dirt coming through on the side. So this is our Escort air conditioning. I think on a 40-degree day in the middle of Australia, I don't know whether you'd want to have them open or whether you'd want to have them closed. Either way, you're going to be uncomfortable. From the paint job, and even from hearing Bruce talk, you can tell that he's certainly a character. And that comes across in a whole bunch of parts in his Ford Escort. Things like the custom handbrake lever. These things on the doors here. So Bruce actually drove as a stunt driver in Mad Max 4 Fury Road. And he was lucky enough to collect some of the parts. So these were the damaged parts as they were making the movie. So this is actually a part of the war rig that he's managed to salvage and then use it as his door opener. It's awesome stuff. There's such great stories here. Whether it's a circuit car, a rally car, or a drag car, I've sort of been around enough of them now that I kind of know all the components and I know where everything is. But hey, Bruce, what's this thing, mate?
Yeah, sorry, Scott. What did you want to know, mate?
What is this thing?
Well, that's a lot of technology gone into that, right? That's actually called the pissophone. That's for long distance driving. And you better wash your hair. No, it's been clean, mate. I washed the whole cab out. But basically, there's about 10 years worth of development in to get that hose to do that. So what happens is, when I do the long distance races, got to drink a lot of water because it's always in the hot deserts that I've done. And we're in the car for 5 to 10 hours and you've got to drink a lot of water. And if you drink enough water, you've got to urinate. If you don't urinate, you're dehydrating. So we had to do a lot of development work. We had bags.
I don't know, hang on, are you serious?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of failures, I can tell you that. We used to have a hole in the seat for pissing in. That was one way to get rid of it. But then it hits the hot floor and stinks like hell. And then there's a mess and the boys wouldn't get in the car working on it. So then I had a bag on my leg, like in your hospital, when you've ever been to hospital and they put the bag on.
Yeah.
That was a failure there because by the time doing 300 kilometre stage, 3 or 4 hours, you'd fill the bag up and then you still want to keep going. And then using the clutch, the thing would tie around your leg and when it was full and turn it in a knot, and then you want to do a wee again and it was like, it's just blockage.
It's just backing up.
He's backing up, and there's nothing you can do about it. So it's, and then I'd come and then I saw the off-roaders in America. They use They have the hose down out the bottom of their driving suit, but they've got automatic, so their left foot does nothing, and they have a hole in the floor, so they just piss out on the floor, right? Because they're in their bar for 10, 12 hours or longer.
Yeah.
So then, because I'm doing the Dakar, I've got to work out our best way to do this. So I rang my brother. He's a doctor. I said, I need to put a catheter. What can I do? And he says, we got things at the hospital. I said, well, where can I get them from? He said, you got to go to the disabled supplies in Sydney. So I went over to the place at Silverwater, lovely people, very helpful. I said, this is what I want to do. And they go, oh, that's a bit weird. Anyway, have you got anything? She said, oh, well, you'll need a Uridome, which is like a condom with glue on it that rolls on your old fella, and it's got a tube out the end of it. And then, but the problem is you've got to get it from there through your driving suit out to outside. And then the problem is you've got to be able to connect it because you've got to jump out in a hurry and you forget, and it's glued to your old fella. So you're halfway out the door, your old fellas try to get pulled out your driving suit. So took a long time to work that one out. And then I saw the V8 supercars and they had two hoses hanging out their pocket from the dry suit. I go, shit, that's a good way to do it. So, because you can't cut your driving suit because it's not flameproof anymore. So I cut the pocket and then you've got to feed it in. It takes a while to sit it in and then you stick it out your pocket and it plugs into there. So when you get out, you can wear it 100 times and it doesn't matter. And then you get out and if you forget, it doesn't hurt. It stays on there. But when I was developing it, I had a Swedish mate and he was doing the long distance stuff too. And he went, oh, no, I have the better solution. I have been talking to the military helicopter pilots because they have to fly for hours and hours. And they shave their Jats crackers and their old fella and they glue this one on. And he's got the bag. And I said, mate, that fails. I told you it doesn't work. Anyway, he's done the 300K stage and we've pulled up. He's pulled up behind and he's coming out screaming because his bag's tied in a knot. He's got back pressure. He can't even, he's running over to the trees. And he pulls off the hose, eventually pulls his suit off, pulls the hose off, and it was like a fire hydrant going everywhere. And I said, mate, I told you that it doesn't work. So that's the technology. It goes out and we cut the pipe at the end so it creates a draft as it comes through the floor. It's cut at an angle and the air coming out and gets a little bit of suction.
So you've got a Venturi going
Venturi effect on the, like a Weber that's sucking the wing
on
out.
your driver extraction system.
And if the diff's getting a bit hot, it just cools it down.
All right, well, that's as good a time as ever to wrap it up, I think. Bruce, mate, thanks so much for showing us through your beautiful car today, for all the entertainment. I've had an absolute blast. For you guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you next time. No, but seriously, you just piss through this when you're driving.
Yeah, absolutely.